Boom, baby. We're live and direct here on Google Plus. It's another MMA Breakdown podcast. Really quickly, this podcast is brought to you by naturebox.com, where you get really good, healthy alternatives to snacking. They have gluten-free, they have dry fruit, they have peanuts, they have just anything you want to eat. They have over 100 different items that are delicious, nutritious, and taste good and don't taste bad. Because normally, when you try something that is good for you, you might think, oh, well, this is kind of bad. Hold on a second, guys. I don't know if that made it a little bit more crispy or not. I was trying to use this little LED light to get the lighting a little bit better. And I'm trying just like this. Maybe that will do for right now. But what we're talking about is, why is Ronda Rousey so dominant? I put up a video. For some reason, I don't know if it was YouTube or if it was the way it was edited. It didn't come out correctly. It just did not show up. It was like a blank video. And I was talking about, why is she so dominant? Is it her judo is so good that she dominates women just by slamming them on the ground? And would Ronda Rousey be as good as she is if she didn't have the judo background? Because you look at it this way. When was the last time you seen Ronda Rousey throw a lot of leg kicks, body kicks, check a kick? When was the last time you seen that? Ronda Rousey is a dominant force in the MMA world, but she hasn't shown a lot of her skills. It's like saying this. When Brock Lesnar was the UFC heavyweight champion, he was smashing people with his wrestling. If he didn't have his wrestling background, he wouldn't have gone far in the MMA world. He would have just been one of those dudes who gets grounded and pounded and beat down because his boxing sucked. And everybody knows that. He's not the greatest fighter to ever live. Is Ronda Rousey the greatest MMA fighter of all time? I don't really think so. And I know I'm going to get hate for this, but I'm saying, look at it this way. Look at Anderson Silva, what he's accomplished. He shows he has good jiu-jitsu. He has great stand-up. Look at people like BJ Penn. He had tremendously good boxing, good jiu-jitsu. And you look at Ronda Rousey. She doesn't throw any leg kicks. So I was always wondering if the reason why she's so dominant is because of her judo background. Me personally, I think that has a big thing into it, because she's been training judo since she was like 5 years old, made it to the Olympics, won the Olympic medal, and is now a UFC fighter. And my thing is, if she never had the judo background, would she be an MMA fighter, for one? Or would she even have the skill set to hang and bang with a lot of these other women? Because the only other woman I know that can hang with her decently is Miesha Tate. And Miesha Tate has good jiu-jitsu, good stand-up, but always gets thrown around by Ronda because her judo is so on point. But with that being said, that's just my honest opinion. I think Ronda Rousey is one of the greatest fighters to ever walk in MMA. It's just her judo is what is so dominant. And you never seen her throwing anything else besides an armbar. She doesn't throw a Kimura. She doesn't throw a triangle. Maybe her triangle and her other submissions that suck. That's why she relies on one move. It's kind of like what Eddie Bravo was saying on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, that if you have one move, you should focus on that one move and dominate that move. So when you actually go to compete and you use that move, you're just slamming it and dominating people. So her knockout punch is pretty much her judo throw into the armbar. I mean, if you can get out of the armbar, then I don't know what else she has, because Ronda's never been put in that compromising position. It's the same thing when John Jones proved that he was a champion, that nobody could beat him. And then Alex Gustin came along and dominated that fight and beat him up. And that showed after he came back in the 5th round and started beating up Alex Gustin. It proved that he was the champion that everybody said he was. Same thing what happened to Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva. He was dominating him for 5 rounds. Most fighters would have just like gave up, but no, what did he do? He gave it his all and pulled out a triangle in the 5th round and made Chael Sonnen tap. And everybody was like, Oh my God, Chael Sonnen was capable of doing that to John or to Anderson Silva, and then they're like, he's gonna do the same thing to John Jones. So he goes up to light heavyweight and gets completely annihilated. So everybody was like, wait, how did John Jones just beat this dude up in like a minute? When Chael Sonnen was like looked at as one of the best wrestlers, he got taken down and ground and pound. And it's the same thing. Ronda Rousey, I honestly think, is going to remain the UFC women's bantamweight champion for a long time because there's nobody in the UFC that can hang with her right now. And the UFC did sign Chris Cyborg to a contract. I guess they're proven to Chris Cyborg saying, if you can make the weight at 135, we're willing to make this a title fight at 135 because as Ronda Rousey, she doesn't have to go up in weight or down in weight. She's going to stay at 135 and compete because she's the champion. She didn't have to go up in weight. But I always say this as an MMA mixed martial arts fan, you love to see the fighters who could compete at two weight classes. Look at it this way. Everybody thought Benson Henderson that went up in weight class was going to get smashed. He actually did pretty good at 170. And is it a possibility that he goes back up to 170 more often? Yeah, it's a possibility that this dude goes up to 170. Even Conor McGregor's talking about going up in weight class. It's just, as a mixed martial arts fan, you love to see the guys compete at the best fights they possibly can. If it's lightweight, heavyweight, whatever, you're going to see John Jones eventually go to heavyweight. It's just unedible because this dude is a big light heavyweight, and I think he will fight at one or two fights at heavyweight. But I'm like I'm saying, Ronda Rousey is just one of those chicks that nobody has the ability to beat, and you got to stay away from her. You got to do the elusive shit when you fight her. You got to stand the outside and play it safe. You can't go rushing in, throwing flying knees like Kat Zingano did. Kat Zingano did a stupid thing. Everybody thinks the way to beat her is to rush her. And my personal opinion is, if her ultimate move is that judo throw, why would you rush in to fight her like that? That is the stupidest thing. It's so dumb that you're going to run in there and try to take this chick's head off when Ronda's very aggressive, and Ronda is a judo black belt, and I think she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but she hasn't shown a lot. Like I said, guys, she hasn't thrown any leg kicks. We don't know what happens when Ronda Rousey is in a compromising position and getting beat up. We don't know any of that shit. I just think maybe the only chick in the UFC that can beat her is the 115-pound fighter right now. That chick is a very dominating striker. If she can go up to 135, I'm not even exactly sure what her name is, but she can go up there and maybe hang and bang with Ronda Rousey. You guys might be thinking I'm stupid. The 115-pound champion go up to 135. Well, she looked big for that weight class, and her boxing and Muay Thai is on point. And everybody's like, well, Holly Holmes is the woman that's in the UFC right now that can hang with Ronda Rousey and beat Ronda Rousey. I don't really personally think Holly Holmes is even in the same universe as Ronda Rousey. People are talking about Holly Holmes as like the next girl to beat her. Nah, I don't even think the girl that's going to be competing up against her next is going to beat her. It's probably only going to be somebody like Chris Cyborg that gives her a run for her money. That's personally my honest opinion. She's going to be like a Floyd Money Mayweather, go on like a 10, 12, 14 fight win streak and never lose. She's probably going to retire before she loses. The same thing's going to happen to Floyd Money Mayweather. That dude's going to retire before he has a blemish on his career. It's just what it is. I don't see anybody beating her. And look at this hype. Where was this Gina Carano hype? Gina Carano's going to come back to the UFC and compete against Ronda Rousey at 145. And she was like, yeah, I'm willing to go up to 145 to fight Gina Carano, because Gina Carano is the legendary woman. She was the biggest star in women's MMA at the time, but that was just hype. No one wants to see Gina Carano fight in the UFC after she's been out of the octagon for like 5 years. What's she gonna do? Go in there and get beat down? And people are like, well, that fight wasn't what it was supposed to be. It just made the UFC money. And what do you guys think of this Conor McGregor dude who's really, really talking so much shit that people are saying, is he overly talking the shit or is he really this crazy? I mean, when was the last time you actually seen a Jose Aldo come out of the woodworks and actually like taunt his opponents, talk trash about his opponents, and actually show his personality? Because I've never seen this, and I think this is the way the UFC should hype up fights more often, is do these unbedded shows, because it shows the fighter not just like the countdown shows, because I think the countdown shows are kind of like dead. No, nobody really watches UFC like 90 countdown. They watch these unbedded shows because they're more like a vlog style video, and people want to see their favorite fighters in their daily life, like from the press conference to just talking to uh, showing them that goofing off. People love to see that and see that MMA fighters are real dudes. And Conor McGregor, I think, is the next 145-pound champion. You guys might be thinking I'm stupid by saying this, but I don't think he's going to get smashed. I think he's so crazy that he knows how to beat Jose. Jose has not dominated a fighter in a very long time. He hasn't knocked out somebody. He hasn't dominated somebody. Even Mark Hominick in the 5th round of their fight was on him, grounding and pounding him. And that was a fight that Mark Hominick had this big, huge welt on his face. And he was out there dominating him in the 5th round, because Jose Aldo has had times in the past where he has gassed out. He hasn't done that great, and he has had weight problems, like cutting weight. That's why he has gassed out. So, do you think the reason why Jose Aldo doesn't come out there and just furiously dominate his opponents like in the 1st round, is brutally knock out somebody from bell to bell, is because he's afraid if he can't knock him out in the 1st round, he's going to be gassing out? Or the reason why he hasn't really changed up his game plan in so many years is he's been so dominant, he's just doing the same thing over and over, and it becomes kind of boring. When was the last time you got hyped up for a fight of Jose Aldo's? Not really. And I think Conor McGregor is the dude that's making Jose a superstar. He's the guy who's talking so much trash that people are like, wait a minute, I never thought of Jose Aldo as a great fighter. Jose Aldo is going to come out there and dominate. Because there's a lot of people that say they used to love Conor McGregor, but they say Conor McGregor is basically overdoing the shit talking, disrespecting in the point of taking his belt and calling them bitches and calling them names. That's just a fight game, man. Look at it this way. You have Nick and Nate Diaz. They talk shit in the cage. They flip your opponent off. They rough their opponents up. It's called the emotional game. And when you get in someone's head, you can play the game of, well, I already won before I got in there. Look at it this way. Nate Diaz versus Cowboy Donald Cerrone. Cowboy Donald Cerrone was a dude, right now is on like a 7-fight win streak, very dominant, got in the cage with Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz dominated him because he was playing that mindset game. Conor McGregor knows how to play that mindset game better than anybody. And one last thing before I let you guys go on the podcast is, what is Conor McGregor always obsessed with? Human motion. He's like, I always study human motion and study the way humans move and the way humans react. And I know how this guy reacts. And he goes, I don't move like any other fighter. I move differently. And he has a very different style. And I think the style of 2015 is very different than the style that Brock Lesnar came from. You see all the fighters that were in the era of Brock Lesnar or Ken Shamrock or even Josh Koscheck. Look at it this way. Josh Koscheck was a dude who was very dominant. And now the last couple fights, he can't do shit because he relied back in the day with the heavy-handed punch and his wrestling. And when those things don't work, he has nothing to give. Nothing. Look at it this way. John Jones, for example, when one thing's not going his way, he knows how to do spinning back fists, spinning elbows, crazy kicks, knees. And his style would just annihilate most fighters from the early days and all the way up to about 2010. Because before John Jones came into UFC, there wasn't a lot of fighters doing a lot of spinning head kicks, spinning back kicks, judo. There wasn't a lot of that. And I think the new age of MMA fighter is this all-rounded, and they're more of an athlete. Look at it this way. If GSP, look at his overall body style, he looks like a NFL running back. You go back in the early days of like Tank Abbott, that dude was just a big 250-pound dude that was fat, out of shape, and he just went in there swinging for the fences. That's pretty much all he did. But I'm Trevor. This is the MMA Breakdown Podcast, and my question for you today is, why is Ronda Rousey so dominant? Is it her judo that makes her dominant? Is it the judo that is the reason why she's undefeated? If she didn't have her judo background, would she be as dominant as she is? Because her boxing is now picked up. If you go to her Instagram, you can see her boxing getting really good. You don't see her throwing leg kicks. Here's my opinion. Ronda Rousey is a fighter that relies on extremely fast hands of her boxing, her judo throw, and her armbar. If she can't pull off the armbar, then what can she pull off on the ground? Like, seriously, we haven't seen her do anything. And that's just my opinion. I think Ronda Rousey, like I said, is a very dominant fighter, but she relies on three things and three things only. And especially on the ground, I don't know, like Luke Thomas, MMAfighting.com said it. Is her guillotine garbage? Is her triangle choke trash? Is it the only reason why she focuses on her armbar and armbars people? It's because it works, and that's the only thing that does work, because every other move she has sucks and it's trash? That's possible because you've never seen fighters who just dominate with one move. She won 8-0, just winning by armbar. That's ridiculous. 8 wins by armbar or something like that. So, as always, like I said, if you guys got any questions to ask, post in the comment section below. And this is the MMA Breakdown Podcast. Why is Ronda Rousey so fucking dominant? I really don't know. I think it's one or two things: her judo and her armbar. That's it. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. I'm out of here.